I'm gonna be honest, the more I listen to some people online, the more I realize that maybe it's my priorities that just aren't wired that way, or some people just have their priorities just all the way in the wrong direction. Point is, it's not that you don't have the ingredients, you're just using the ingredients poorly. And I say this not as an expert, but as someone that has lived a couple of years as an adult. And I don't think an adult has to be an expert in what I'm going to talk about, but at least some level of caution should be exercised to some degree. And you know what? I intend on giving some tips on how to handle caution as like the first thing, since some of y'all seem to be ignoring it. Although, for me to do that, I do need to get into the main topic, of which, before I can do anything, where am I man as I should have started with an intro? Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is Sir Denver B. This is a shorter, less edity, no instrumentally version of the podcast where I basically just give one topic and I speak about it. I don't say briefly, but I basically just do a shorter episode that requires a lot less work, and it was probably something that was done either before or as I was getting into my break, because I am on break right now, and is supposed to basically fill up the time up until I come back and do my full episodes. And this is another example of them. All right. Now, I have to admit one thing. In as much as I do talk about this podcast discussing love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, I feel like, actually it's not even feel like, I've mainly been focusing on the love and the relationships and not a lot on the sex. And, it has been for particularly good reason. I do think at some point people kind of did start getting tired of all the sex talk, but I feel like this would be a good time to bring some of it back, considering that it's been a while since I actually did discuss a sex-based topic. And this particular topic is actually based off of the sayings, or should I say, the remarks that were made, as well as the topic itself, actually did come from a clip that was posted up on an influencer known as Oloni's page. And she basically did give a couple of pointers, and she was asking about the 3 questions that you ask someone before you have sex with them. And while it's not something that I think people really think about, most times people kind of just want to get stuff done, and they usually will want to handle the precautionary side of things. She had a couple of questions that I found to be particularly interesting, and not interesting because I liked them, interesting because I found it a little bit odd the way they were set up. But before I can say anything more regarding that particular clip, let me just let it play, then I can speak my thoughts on it, so that at least you guys understand the context of it. So, without further ado,
3 questions you ask a guy before you sleep with him. These 3 questions will never, ever lead you astray. Pay attention. 1, how do you feel about toys? It's important. Now, you don't even need to be someone who uses toys. That's completely fine. But the way he answers the question tells you everything you need to know. I once slept with a guy that was huffing and puffing because I pulled out my Pro 40 by Womanizer. She is the only reason why I'm even going to get intimate with you, because she actually helps heighten the experience. I remember he made a comment, something like, oh, this is how you desensitize yourself. Shut the fuck up. Shh. You're telling me, of all people, what a toy will do to you. Are you new here? Are you? And I just thought to myself, ugh, you're so misogynistic. It just gave very you don't need a toy. My penis will do everything. Are they positive about it? Do you hear optimism in their voice? Or is it someone who sounds a bit jealous that they have to share you with this plastic inanimate toy? Question 2, what is your after sex routine? You need to know if he's a hugger, if he's someone who is going to get you a nice wet or dry rag. Do you just bounce and go and say, I'll see you later? Should be the bare minimum, but sadly for some it just isn't. Or is he someone that just gets himself clean and he doesn't care about you? You need to know you're with someone who is thinking about you even after sex. Final 1, when was the last time you got an STI test? Imagine all the things you can do when you know you're both negative. Let me know some of the questions you ask.
Okay. Now, those are some particularly interesting questions that she asks. Not that I think they're that profound or anything, but I feel like, especially coming from a babe, not that, guys shouldn't be asking some of these questions as well, they definitely should. I feel like she's probably thrown a bit more caution to the wind than what I'd expect most babes to be doing. Now, don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, it is her list. And it is something that she basically came up with on her own. I'm guessing there's other women who have their own lists and, they have their own priorities and everything. And that's okay. It's just, I feel like out of that entire list, I probably wouldn't recommend anyone using the list, at least hers, save for maybe the third question. The third one makes sense because that's a question that I would use and it's a question that I'd also ask. But the other two just feel like you're just interested in the sex, but at the same time you want some of like the emotional affection afterwards. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But looking at those three questions, so I managed to nail them down. And the first one was, how do you feel about toys? Of which, like, the whole way that she kind of described it, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's just, it seems as though she's very dependent on those toys. And in as much as she was busy trying to brush off the fact that a dude actually told her that her using the toys all the time will probably desensitize her, like, I feel like whatever the hell it was that dude was saying was actually true. Because the way she describes it, it does seem like the only way that she can really enjoy sex is if she uses toys. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it almost kind of sounds like those people that usually complain that they won't go for an event if there's no booze. Like, are you so unable to enjoy yourself without the booze that you have to get the booze involved? It's like if you were meeting with someone for like a glass of juice and, they always have to make sure that the juice has alcohol in it, I think you'd probably also look at it as though there's a problem there. Or like if you saw them, having like iced tea with you or like tea with you, and then they're pouring a bit of Irish whiskey in there and trying to make themselves an Irish tea, like it would seem a little bit odd, to say the least, if that was the only way that they would take their drinks. But then again, that's just me. Maybe I have something against toys, of which I actually don't, but maybe I might have some level of bias and I could be wrong. But then you look at the second question, which was the after sex routine, and I don't know. While I can get the whole wanting to know what the after sex routine is, for the most part, if you are doing it casually with someone, at least as far as my knowledge is concerned, there's a lot of those things that may not be taken into account. Now, there are some things that are kind of left to courtesy. So, like, the whole wiping down, the whole trying to make sure that you're clean, just as much as he's clean or she's clean. I think those are things that kind of come as almost a form of courtesy as opposed to a requirement by the guy. Because at the end of the day, like, y'all met up just to do the do. The other bits that come before or after are kind of add-ons. So, for example, if a babe wouldn't cook for me after we smashed, it's not like I'm supposed to catch a feeling because, I went, I exerted myself and I probably used way more energy, so I probably need more nourishment. Like, it's not like I can make that sort of an argument because there's a babe that will hear me say that and say, if I'm cooking for you, then you're either going to be my partner or you're my partner or we're exclusive. And considering that I am not that, by the sound of the way she was busy discussing it, then there's a pretty good chance that a lot of these things might not be given to you. Although, I could also be wrong about that one. But all that said and done, like, I'm looking at the order of these questions, and yes, I know I should have touched on the third one as well, but I will touch on it a little later. But when I look at the order, I feel like this kind of puts pleasure at the top and it kind of puts safety at the bottom. Don't get me wrong, it's not like there was a particular order that they're supposed to be asked as questions. She could be asking from 3 to 1 instead of 1 to 3, but the assumption is that she's going to start with the first question being, how do you feel about toys? Then the after sex routine, if anyone has one, and the last time you got an STI check. Like, that sounds like the order that she'd probably ask it in. And while that's not the case, I'd probably reorder things and I'd probably remove some of those things from there. Now, don't get me wrong, this is based off of just how I carry myself as a guy and how I'd probably go about this so-called list, because I think it would be a little bit different from me as opposed to if it was another woman that was kind of asking for it. Are they the nasty type? Do they prefer it vanilla? Are they the type to do casual sex with multiple individuals, or are they like a one-person kind of thing? all of those things can kind of alter some of the questions that are there, but I feel like I have a different set of questions and they come in a particularly different order. But even with that said, I do think that, even with whichever order you'd want it, I do think that there are certain fundamentals that you need to look at first. Like the first one being safety, considering that sex, in and of itself, much as it's a great act, it does pose some very, very dangerous risks, depending on which gender is there. And it is something that I believe people should definitely look into. So, risks of getting pregnant, risks of STDs, STIs, there's also issues like attachment and so on. Like, I feel like if I was to kind of create this entire list for myself, I'd probably do things a little bit differently. And even off the top of my head, I would have my first priority being safety, my second priority being more of some sort of protection, and the third one kind of being somewhere in and around, still one of those two, if not maybe then now looking at the preference of the other side. And I kind of did think about it for a quick few minutes, and I kind of came up with a list very quickly before I started recording. And so, just off the top of my head, all right, if I was to do my own list, my very first thing that I'd probably ask is, when was the last time you got an STI check? And or do you have any conditions that I need to know about? Reason being, like I said, sex can actually expose you to a couple of dangerous factors and risks out here, because it is, in all intents and purposes, a biologically vulnerable situation to be in. Because especially if you're a woman, you're exposing your insides to an external party, or should I say external forces, which kind of does put things in a certain state of risk. Even with guys, the same thing occurs. It's just that with guys, you could argue that they might be a little bit safer since our dicks are outside by design. But all in all, asking the last time they got an STI check, if they have any conditions, that can definitely help decide things, because there are people that have things like a sperm allergy, there's people who have hypospermia, there's people that have, STIs that they're living with that could probably be controlled so they're not really like a threat. And maybe you might just need to wrap up so that, you ensure that you don't catch it. Like, at the end of the day, getting answers for that and understanding if there's any medical conditions is very paramount to, whether you guys can actually do it and enjoy it, and whether the aftermath is going to be good, bad, or just okay. Because, knowing someone's medical condition can actually protect the both of you, and not knowing can actually harm the both of you in one way or another. Like, for example, if the both of you have HIV, like, you guys could be reinfecting each other, which is even worse. But, that's sort of besides the point. Then the second question that I'd probably ask is, are you on any contraceptives? And whether or not you are, if in the event that, we end up doing the do and, you end up missing a couple of days worth of your period and you suspect that you're pregnant, are you going to go the route of abortion, or are you going to want to keep the kid? Because at the end of the day, it's good to know there are some people that aren't for the idea of keeping the kid. There are some people that are for the idea of keeping the kid. And regardless of whether she has a contraceptive or not, regardless of whether the guy is told to wear a condom or not, I think planning for that, unlikely eventuality for some people, if not most, is something that the both of you would probably benefit the most from. Because knowing where you guys stand on that would be something that would help prevent a lot of problems that could come down the road in the unlikely event that shit hits the fan. I know people will talk about stupid games win stupid prizes, but accidents happen sometimes. Just saying. All right. But last but not least, the third question would be the one that I would probably open it up to the other person's preferences, in that I'd ask, how do you prefer it? Do you want someone who's rough with you, or do you prefer it smooth? Do you like pain? Do you don't like pain? Are you the sloppy, sweaty type, or do you not like it like that and you would much rather, you kind of pull shit back? Are you into BDSM? Do you like being tied up? Do you like role playing? Like, stuff like that is now what I'd probably bring into the third question, which wouldn't really be a question. It would sort of just be a broad understanding of what exactly are your preferences and how would you prefer it done. Because at least at that point, after you've gotten past the whole safety and protection bits, that's when you can really look at really getting to enjoy the sex. Because at the end of the day, if if there's a bunch of risks and you're not too sure about shit, you won't really enjoy it as much as you'd really like to. And, with all of this said, I feel like I've probably kind of given a pretty good understanding. So, to kind of conclude all of this, I'll just say that while you make your list, quote unquote, if you are going to make a list, have a certain goal in mind. And while, yes, I can understand, with sex, pleasure is the goal, always look at your safety first. And as you look at your safety first, I didn't even touch on stuff like emotional safety. Is there a certain way that you'd like to do it such that you don't catch feelings for the other person? You should always look into stuff like that as you plan your list so that you can definitely secure yourself. And, with precautions and safety measures in place, you can definitely enjoy yourself to the fullest extent within those boundaries. Because, in the great words of the rapper Lil Wayne, safe sex is great sex. Better wear that latex, cause you don't want that latex that I think I'm late text. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.